Hi, it's Barkamilo here with a new video. I usually don't do videos like this, but tell me what you think about it. The audio may be terrible, and I'm very sorry if it is. Most of this is scripted, but you will still hear ums and uhs and things like that, so I repeat a lot of things too, so watch out for that as well. That's just a disclaimer, so you all know. Anyways, I'll be talking about a book I finished a few days ago called Extraordinary Means. I'll put the author up on the screen since I know I'll pronounce her last name wrong. First of all, I'll be introducing the characters and I'll be rating them 1 through 10, 10 meaning they're amazing and that they're my favorite, and 1 meaning I hate them, though you won't see that at all. We'll start with the main character, Lane. Lane was focused on school and getting good grades before he got diagnosed with tuberculosis. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and got sent to the Latham house. He had a girlfriend before he was sent to the Latham house as well, Hannah. They did their work together, and honestly I didn't really like the relationship. He broke up with her while at the Latham house, and honestly I'm glad, because he'd spend more time with the main love interest, who we'll get to soon. He started off just wanting to continue working, but soon the nurses found out and told him basically he couldn't do that because his health was declining. He became friends with the friend group the main love interest was in, and I'll cover more of that once we move on to her. I'd rate him an 8 out of 10. He's relatable at some moments, and he isn't boring or rude, really, so he's a great character all in all. And yeah, that's all I have about him, so yeah. Here we are, talking about the main love interest now. There may be random pauses through this because it's super long. So yeah. Her name is Sadie, who's been at the Latham house for longer than Lane. There isn't too much explained about her life before she got diagnosed, but there was a bit about her family. Her dad had either left or died, I don't really remember, and she had her mom and her little sister. That's really all there is to know about that, so we'll move on to her time in the Latham house and her relationship with Lane. This is set before she had gotten diagnosed, but it also ties with her relationship with Lane, so I'll talk about it now. Sadie had gone to summer camp when she was 13. She met Lane there, and there was this prank that had happened, probably done by people who thought Lane was weird, because he was described as a nerd, where Sadie was tricked into thinking Lane had asked her out on a dance, but he really didn't, and then later a note was sent to Sadie saying that he had changed his mind. This left Sadie angry at him for years, which leads up to him meeting again at the Latham house. They bumped into each other at the cafeteria, and Sadie had still thought she was a jerk, when he really wasn't, and basically yelled at him, then stormed up. Eventually, Lane tells her that it was a prank, and he hadn't written those notes. He proved this by showing his handwriting, which is clean and neat, very different from the notes, which were described as messy. Sadie brought out an eventual side of Lane as they grew closer, and Lane joined their friend group. They didn't officially say they were together at really any point in the book, but I didn't really mind because who goes out and announces, hey, I'm in a relationship with this person? Anyways, this is going to be a big time skip, but I'll explain it in the middle of it later because it's really about another character. Sadie was out at night, past the time everyone was supposed to be in their beds, and she was going to get a supply of sweets and things like that from Michael, someone who had been at the Latham house and understood that they aren't allowed to have sweets, and so he took some to her every month. I think. Don't take my word on that. I'm not sure if it was every month or every week, so. Anyways, this time was different because she didn't have anyone with her. Michael got angry, blaming the fact that he had tuberculosis on her, which I guess was partially true. Sadie had snuck out with Lane a bit before this, which of course they were supposed to do. Michael argued with her and eventually got angry enough that he punched her, throwing her against a tree. Ouch. Every person at the Latham house had wristbands that alerted the nurses if their heart rate was fast and things like that, so Sadie's went off, and the nurses ran out to help her. Lane was outside and noticed following. He followed the nurses, and Sadie and Lane were taken to the hospital part of the Latham house, and Lane was very weak and sick. Lane was taken there because they had given him some type of medicine to calm him down because he was really freaking out about Sadie being hurt. Her family stayed there for a while. When Sadie wasn't too weak, she decided to take a medication to try and cure her tuberculosis. I'm sorry, I probably just said that wrong. But it had tons of side effects, and the new treatment would only come in a few weeks, 3 weeks, which was too long. Sadly, Sadie passed away because of the medication. Sadie's a really interesting character, and I was heartbroken that she died in the end. I think I'd rate her 9 out of 10. But honestly, she would have been a better character if she hadn't died, but the sad ending was pretty good, and it's great, though that sounds weird to say. Next character is Nick. He was very close to Sadie. Nick was mostly a comedic relief character, but near the end when Sadie passed, he was heartbroken, having feelings for her as well, which he and Lane worked out in the end. There isn't a lot said about his life before being diagnosed. He's a really fun character and relatable. I don't have a lot to say about him, which is quite sad, but I think I rate him a 7 out of 10. He wasn't my favorite, but I liked him. Marina, I don't have too much to say about her either, but she's a nice character. She was pretty close with Sadie because of them being the only 2 girls in the friend group. She wrote fan fiction, and if I remember correctly, was interested in acting. I like her character, but I feel like she was just there. Like, I wish there was more of her, even though the story was mostly centered around Sadie and Lane and Nick. I'd rate her a 7 out of 10 as well. Last but definitely not least, we have Charlie. There's not much to say about his life before he got diagnosed either. He liked to draw and write music. Charlie was the most quiet of the friend group, occasionally cracking a joke here and there. He was also the sickest of the group, but they tried not to mention it. Lane, Sadie, Marina, and Nick were out in the woods celebrating Marina's birthday when Charlie tried to go out with them, and he had sadly died. His sickness had gotten to him. I had cried when he died, and it was written really well. Before Charlie passed, he had finished an album of music, which he left for his friends. Sadie had blamed his death on herself, but eventually I think her friends helped her with that. Charlie's death left Nick and Marina sad as well, but not really Lane. He was sad for sure, but I don't think that much, since he had not known him for as long as Sadie, Nick, and Marina did. Charlie was one of my favorites. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he liked to draw as well. I'll rate him a 9 out of 10. If he hadn't died, then probably a 10 out of 10. But since I cried over this book, I'm angry at it. Not literally, though, just kidding. Now I'll talk a little about the storyline and things I liked. This is going to be super short, so this is basically the end of the video. Yeah. This book was paced really well, even though it started out slow, but I think all books are like that. It's relatable and funny. The definition of a sappy love story. It reminds me of John Green's books, and he actually is mentioned in this book, which I find quite funny. Sadie was said to be reading a John Green book in class. There's a few things that you could use as like good advice. I bet someone would put a quote up on their wall if they really wanted to. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me ramble. If you're looking to find a book to laugh and cry to, definitely Extraordinary Means. Thank you. Goodbye.